Heart beats fast, colors and promises. How to be brave? How can I love when I'm afraid to fall? But watching you stand up.
Hi, today we're going to be making a beautiful rose arrangement. Your finished product will end up looking something like this, hopefully. What we'll be needing is a dozen roses, right here, some leather fern, or any kind of greenery of your choice, as well as some filler. We'll be using Baby's Breath Million Stars today. The first thing you want to do is fill your vase with water. This is a 9-inch vase. That's very appropriate for this 50-centimeter South American rose arrangement that we'll be doing. When you fill your vase with water, make sure you use flower food. There's usually instructions on the back, and it's really, really vital to the flowers. It really helps them last quite a bit longer than with just regular water. The first thing you're going to be doing with your leather fern is cleaning the stems. A lot of the times they come with residue from the plant on the stems, so you want to make sure you clean off as much of that as you can. And what I'll be using is a lacing technique. This will help hold the flowers in place. You just go around like you're making a bouquet, a hand-tied bouquet. And you want to make sure you insert some stems down the center. As you can see, I'm just holding it in my hand and weaving the stems through the other stems. So this creates a grid. When you feel you've had enough, usually we use anywhere from 8 to 12 stems of leather fern. Now if you're using a different kind of greenery, you might require more or less. So you get a really nice full effect around the edges as well as through the top. Then you cut your stems down to the appropriate length. You don't want them floating around at the top. You want to make sure they're in there securely, but you want to make sure they're long enough so that they're at the bottom of the vase. Next, you have to process your roses. Today's roses are pretty clean. The stems are pretty thornless, but if you do need to get those thorns off, as you can see right here, you can use what's called a rose stripper, but you don't really have to get this. You can just use your clippers or a knife and just go down the stem and just kind of cut the tips off. Okay. When you buy a bunch of roses, you usually have two lengths, a shorter length and a longer length. So I usually start with the shorter length and I separate that from the longer length. What we're going to be doing is inserting the stems into the vase, but make sure you get a nice clean cut on your stems at an angle right before you put it in the water. Once the stems dry out, it won't drink, so you want to make sure they last, yeah? So you insert the flowers at an angle into the leather fern, and as you can see, it's very stable. That's because I created a really sturdy base here. So you just keep going around, stem by stem, making sure to cut the stems right before you insert it in the water. You want to cut off about ½ an inch. Okay. And then I go with the longer stem, and I usually select a really nice straight one for the center. So now I have a domed effect. And then with the rest of the roses, it just goes around that. And sometimes you have to manipulate it so it'll go in where you want it to. It doesn't always listen, but they're living beings, they're living flowers, so you have to listen to them. You can't force your way. And then sometimes you have to pluck out what it called guard petals. When you get your bunches of flowers, usually the roses, you would have to pluck off maybe 2 or 3 petals because those sometimes get damaged in transit. So next, you're going to insert your filler. Same thing, cut at an angle. put it through between the flowers, making sure not to break the stem. And the million stars are really good because they have really sturdy stems. Sometimes if you use the regular, larger baby spread, the stems are a little weaker, so it might be a little bit more difficult. And then in the end, your finished product, you can accessorize with a ribbon or whatever you want to do. You can also use just greens. This one is with eucalyptus and leather fern, and it's very, very elegant.